So let's dive in now that you can hear me. Let's start with a question. Has anybody ever told you that you are too hard on yourself? Just give me yes in the comment if you heard this from anybody or maybe from many people before. And when you heard it, when somebody told you that, did you believe it? Did it sound right? From my experience, I think this is one of the sentences that I use most often with my clients. Surely, like in the top 10 most frequently used sentences. And what usually happens, that's the very interesting thing, what usually happens is that there is this moment of a pause, like a moment of recognition. You can see in a very tangible way that it deeply resonated. Quite often you can see even, the eyes of the person welling up, because in that moment they can really feel seen and they can really resonate with the truth of these words, and I can see or feel the promise of self-forgiveness. And that usually lasts just a second. It's just a fraction of a second, a few moments, and then the mind kicks back in, yes, with all the judgments and rationalizations and accusations and faults and interpretation, all the usual stuff, and it seems like we are back to square one. Well, we never are. It's just some comments and some questions need to be repeated over and over again until they create this crack through which some light might come in. But most of us really are very hard on ourselves, right? We reject ourselves, we beat ourselves up. We have this background of self-talk, of how not enough this or too much that we are. And it's hard enough to live with this undercurrent of constant self-criticism, but we bring it even to the next level, because apart from this undercurrent, we usually have some specific mistakes, some wrong choices, yes, some poor decisions, some ways we hurt ourselves or others that we blame ourselves for and that we feel guilty about. And quite often it's, these feelings of guilt and shame, we carry them like a backpack on our back, like full of bricks. It's heavy, it's draining, our back is all sore, our legs want to give up, but for some reason we do not feel like we can put this backpack down and move forward light-footed. So let me know, like in the comments, whether you know what I'm talking about, yes, whether you know the feeling of moving forward with a backpack full of bricks and what it really feels like. You like to bring it with you wherever you want to go. Is this something that you know from your own experience? Because guilt is sticky. It catches us like a spider's web catches a fly. It invades our mind and puts us on this overthinking mode, yes, like obsessive rumination, going through what happened over and over again. It also creates feelings of shame, resentment, regret. And the more we try to break free, or the more we try to push it all deep into our belly, the more entangled we get. And let's not forget that there is poison in the web itself that goes straight into our system. So I know I'm painting a gloomy picture here, but I really want you to see and to face how toxic and detrimental it can be to allow yourself to get stuck in the web of guilt and blame. And remember also that while you stuck there, life is passing you by. So you're not fully present for what's going on. You're not fully available to people you love. You do not have energy or motivation to live your life fully and happily. You're just stuck there waiting for the spider to come and catch you. And I've seen it for myself, of course, and also for hundreds of my clients, how hard it can be to let go. Even if we realize what's going on, even if we realize that this lack of self-forgiveness is stealing our peace of mind, is stealing our joy of life, is ruining our mental or physical even well-being, we seem just unable to let it all go. Yet self-forgiveness is the only way out. So what does self-forgiveness really mean, and how you can practice it in a very practical everyday way so that you can break free from being stuck in this spider's web. I want to share with you 3 things that I think are totally necessary, 3 steps that you can implement, and they are not a quick fix by no means. They require dedication and they require practice, as always, but they are true lifesavers at the same time, and they will make self-forgiveness come easily and naturally to you instead of forcing yourself to do something you are not ready to do. So let's start from the beginning. As always, the first thing is awareness. We always need to start with understanding what's really going on. Have you ever wondered what it is that keeps you so stuck in this place of inadequacy, blame, guilt, or even shame? Why is it so difficult to let go and to simply accept and love yourself the way you are? There are many reasons, of course, and they are different for many of us, but there is one that is most common of all. In order to let go, you would have to admit that you are imperfect and vulnerable, and that it will never change. You will stay imperfect and you will stay vulnerable no matter what you do, or no matter how hard you try to be perfect or invincible. Can you feel a twinge when you hear that? I'm really curious if you can feel this uneasiness or a bit of anxiety when I say it like clear and loud. We hope, sometimes in a very subconscious way, that if only we change this, or if only we achieve that, we would feel hope, we would feel whole, safe, confident, complete, and good enough. And of course you can feel that way, but the way to get there is only through accepting your basic human nature of imperfection and vulnerability, not through overcoming it and not through fixing it. This is your human nature, and it's okay. It's even more than okay. But does that resonate? Well, what happens to you when you accept the fact, when you look at kind of straight into the face that you are vulnerable, and as a human being you will always stay vulnerable, and that you are imperfect, and as a human being you will stay imperfect no matter what? Most of us learn from a very early childhood that we are not okay the way we are, and that in order to be loved and in order to belong, we cannot stay the way we are. We need to change something about us. And this need to belong, this is one of the strongest and deepest needs. It's a biologically determined need, yes, that we have as human beings for thousands of years, because it's not possible to survive on your own. So if you want to survive, you need to belong. So we have this deep, biologically determined need, and at the same time, from very early age, up to today, yes, from our culture, from all of the social media, we got this one message: you should be different, you should be better, you should be smarter, wiser, more organized, richer, more confident, more beautiful, younger, at your own. You should have figured it out. You should do better. How often do you catch yourself saying this in your own mind? How often do you catch yourself thinking this? So all of these messages, they create like an energy field, like a swirl of energy that is made up of thoughts, beliefs, emotions, sensations in the body, memories, automatic reactions, urges to act, like a whole intricate web, exactly like a spider's web in a way, with this one central message. There is something that is not right in you, and you need to change it if you want to survive. You need to change, you need to be better, you need to be different. And this can be very tricky, because even a lot of our good intentions to grow, to heal, even they can come from the place of being not good enough, from the place of something's wrong with me and I need to change. What would happen if you were able to let go of all that? If you were able to completely let go of all you need to change, of all you need to be different than you are? Just close your eyes for a moment and imagine that. Imagine you are able to completely let go of any want, any desire, any need to be any different than you are right now. Can you feel a bit of tension, uneasiness, or even anxiety again rising up as you imagine this? Most often we do, because at some point we started to believe that if we let go of this need or desire to change, we won't improve, we won't grow, we won't be able to be who we want to be or live the way we want to live. We have believed that we can guilt ourselves into being better. We have believed that we can judge and blame ourselves into being a good, loving, and kind person. We have believed that we can criticize ourselves into being someone we can love and accept. But it's all like a huge misunderstanding, right? It's quite absurd when you start to look clearly at what's going on here. Actually, the opposite is true. There is a beautiful quote by Carl Rogers, the father of person-centered therapy. And he said, "The curious paradox is that only when I accept myself the way I am, then I can change." So this first step is always to understand, to see the misconceptions, the misunderstandings, the false beliefs you bought into, and how you perpetuate them and how they keep you stuck. Even understanding this brings a bit of relief and a bit of freedom. But that's just the first step, right? So the second step is understanding clearly what is your responsibility and what is not. So often we take all the blame on us, yes? We take all the bad stuff on board. And the funny thing is that when something good happens, when we are successful, right? Then we dismiss our part completely and we say that we just were lucky, right? Jan says, yes, it feels uncomfortable. The freedom from self-acceptance feels uncomfortable. Yes, most longed for. Right, that's why it's this, there's this paradox here, right? That something we deeply long for at the same time causes so much uneasiness and anxiety. So, in order to understand what your responsibility truly is, you need to let go of the illusion of being in control, right? In order to understand what your responsibility truly is, you need to let go of the illusion that you are in control. We all like being in control. Being in control gives us a sense of safety, right? Even if this is a very false safety, it still feels nice. But the truth is, you are, in so many ways, you are not in control here. The events in your life, all the turning points, the people you've met on your way, and even your own decisions, choices, have been impacted by so many things out of your control. You were born at a certain time, in a certain family, in a certain country, in a certain neighborhood, with a certain skin color. Your mom and your dad brought you in a certain way. You went to school and maybe it was a wonderful experience, or maybe you struggled or were bullied or abused. There was early childhood trauma. Not only trauma with big T, which is obvious that it leaves a huge impact, but even like these small T traumas. For a tiny baby, even a loving face of their mom when it suddenly goes into this grimace of anger can be a trauma with a small T, can leave an imprint on their nervous system. Transgenerational trauma. We now know how huge impact it leaves on how we think, how we feel, how we are in the world. I can see the imprints of the Second World War and the concentration camp my grandfather was in, not only in me, but in my daughter. And she hasn't even met my grandfather. And it's still there. The social situation, economic situation, financial situation your family were in when you were small, all the loss and bereavements, natural disasters, wars, of course, inequality, being a part of a minority, neurodiversity, disability. All this is beyond your control, has been beyond your control, but it shaped you big time. It shaped the way you think, the way you feel, the way you are in the world, the way you think about the world, the way you interpret things that are happening around you, the way you are in your relationships. I want to give you an example of all that. So I worked with a client last year who carried a lot of guilt in her. So she came to me with very severe depression that was going on for a few years, that was not responding to any kind of medication. And 6 years before I met her, she moved abroad and she left her 5-year-old son behind her with his dad. She believed that she would never ever be able to forgive her for doing that. She believed she was a bad person, a terrible mother, a monster, and these are her own words that she used when she was talking to me. What mother leaves a child behind that's unforgivable, right? Why did she do that? She ran away from a very toxic marriage where she was emotionally abused on everyday basis. She was very young at the time. She was in her early 20s. No support in place. She grew up in a very chaotic and toxic family where violence was again an everyday thing. And her marriage proved to be the same, right? It just reinforced in her what she had already believed, that that it was all her own fault, that she was to blame for everything that went wrong. Her husband kept telling her every day that she was a terrible mother, that she did everything wrong, that she was not able to take proper care of their son, and that they would be much, much, much better off without her. Her husband, they lived in a small village. Her husband was a well-respected person in the area. She couldn't find a job, so she was completely isolated, stayed at home, and there was nobody really to question, to say, okay, wait a moment, what is really going on here? There was nobody like that. And she had a sister who had moved abroad many years before, and that felt like the only rescue at the time. She wanted to bring the son with her. Of course, her husband didn't agree, and she couldn't bring him without a passport. So one day when things got really, really bad, she just left. She got the plane, and she found herself miles, thousands of miles away from her son. She hoped she would be able to figure things out and find good solutions and bring her son back to her. But it didn't happen. And this is, of course, a far more complicated story. I just want to give you a glimpse here. So when she was talking to me 6 years later, her son was still with his father, and she was deeply, deeply depressed, thinking she would never be able to forgive herself, getting on the plane. Do you blame her? Do you think she's a terrible mother? Do you think she's a terrible person, like a monster in her own words? Do you think it was her fault what happened? Because when you look at it, can you see how many things were totally beyond her control? The situation, the circumstances, all her childhood and trauma coming from it, the conditioning, the suffering, the pain, all of that created a scenario, created a story in which she appeared to herself as the main villain. But when I look at her, yes, I see an amazingly resilient woman, a courageous and brave soul who chose life, because she did choose a better future for herself and for her son as well, right? But that is not what she was able to see. Yeah, and there is a lot of no's coming through, of course, right? But it's easy to see that when we look at somebody else, when you look at your own stories and your own scenarios. This no is not that clear, right? The guilt she lived with took a huge toll, of course, not only in terms of her mental health, but also in terms of her relationship with her son, because she did stay in touch with him throughout these 6 years, but the relationship felt forced and felt awkward, and of course she blamed herself for that too, right? Any contact with her son brought about this unbearable feeling of guilt, and she was caught in the web completely. So the moment she started to understand what really happened, the moment she started to understand what was her part in the story, what was her responsibility, and all the things that were not, she was able to look at herself with more compassion and with more understanding and with more forgiveness, and then things started to shift. True forgiveness is not dissociating or avoiding, is not condoning as well. It's not avoiding responsibility. It is just seeing your vulnerability, seeing your imperfection, and loving yourself with it. So self-forgiveness is really a form of self-compassion. It's saying, I am okay. I am basically good, lovable, worthy, just the way I am, with all the mistakes that I've made, with all the flaws and imperfections that I have in me. Right now, right here, right the way I am right now, without anything changing in any way, I am okay. That's a very important part, this recognition of what is your responsibility and what is not. Is a huge part of being able to forgive ourselves. And then the last thing, the last step, and this is something that is very necessary, and that is life-changing skills, and this is the ability, the skill to let go, to release. And this is something you can learn. This is something we do all the time in the inner circle, and I do all the time in my one-on-one work with clients. And this is something that we are going to dive deep into the self-love retreat as well. So if you find it hard to let go of guilt, to let go of blame, or of any challenging emotions, thoughts, or beliefs, just be sure to join us, because we will, as I say, we will dive much deeper and we will get very, very practical about it. Releasing, letting go is a very natural process, and I'm sure you can recognize it, because it's quite often it happens spontaneously in our life. So just remember, have you had this experience sometimes in the middle of a heated discussion or even heated argument? Something funny happens, or someone says something funny, and we just burst into laughter, and all the frustration, anger, anxiety, all the challenging emotions are gone in a fraction of a second. Or sometimes it happens overnight. You go to bed with really difficult emotions, yes, feeling angry or frustrated or anxious, and then you wake up the next morning and it's a beautiful morning, the sun is shining, and last night's upset seems to be all gone. Our body knows how to do it, and we can learn how to do this intentionally. You do not need to carry around the emotions that do not serve you. You can learn how to put the backpack with bricks back on the ground. And when you release this guilt and blame, the sense of not being good enough, you very naturally start to move into self-acceptance and start to free yourself from the toxic web you've been stuck into. So this movement to self-compassion, to self-kindness, to self-love, it really feels like coming back home. And the question I would like you to ask yourself and maybe to reflect a bit on is, who would you be if you were able to let go of all the guilt, of all the blame, of all self-criticism? Who how would you be without all that? And what would it feel like to accept yourself with all the mistakes and imperfections? What would it feel like to find out that you are forgiven, that all is forgiven, really? And I would really like to give you a glimpse of that. So I have like a little story from a book that I want to read to you. It's coming, like the author of the book is Scott McClanahan, and the title of the book is Krapalachia, a biography of a place. And this is a very short story, but I'm sure it will help you feel for a moment, but probably in a very deep way, what it feels like when you come to the place of self-forgiveness. One time a man left home. He had argued with his mother and father the day before he left. They spoke horrible words to one another, and he left without saying goodbye. He had been gone many years and even spent time in jail. Years later, he finally got out of jail, and he wondered if his mother and father were even alive, and if they were ashamed of what had been said and of where he wound up. He wrote to them and told them he would be coming home on a specific day the following week. If they wanted to see him and were not ashamed, they should put a blanket on the clothesline, and he would know to come inside. If the blanket was missing, then he would know that he was not welcomed. He would know to turn back. He told them he hoped they were in good health. The man arrived by rail in the next week. He was nervous when he stepped off the train. There was no one there to meet him. He walked up the worn path towards the home and thought about the past. He thought about his time in jail. He thought about how ashamed his parents must have been. He thought about the horrible words they spoke. He was just about to turn around and go back to where he came when he saw a blanket in a tree. He kept walking, and he saw another blanket. He kept walking, and he saw another blanket. Then he turned towards home, and the house was covered in blankets. The yard was covered in blankets. The clothesline was covered in blankets. And the path to the door was covered in blankets. His parents were standing there, and they were welcoming him inside. This story always gets into me, no matter how many times I read it. This is what you need to do for yourself. Welcome yourself back home and see that all is forgiven. Because all that you have ever wanted from life starts with self-love. And self-love very often starts with self-forgiveness. So, again, I really encourage you to join us for the upcoming retreat. The link is in the description, and we will dive much deeper into what you can do to bring more self-acceptance, to bring more self-kindness, to bring more true and authentic self-love into your life. Thanks a million for today. Yes, I will put the offer and the title of the book into the comments in the moment. Thank you very much for today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.